see. This is Nicholas Cruz, who's an American school shooter. He went to Parkland High School in Florida where he shot 34 people, killing 17, and injuring 17 others on February 14th, 2018. The video I'm about to show you is him in prison talking to his brother, not long after he was arrested after committing this horrible act. The video is just disturbing and kind of sad because imagine this is you talking to your brother who just killed 17 people in a school.
You're only 19, dude. You know how many years you had ahead of you? You know how many years you had? Years. You're still stuck in your teenage mindset and you did this dumb shit. You're not thinking about your future.
I still care for you.
What? I still love you.
Still love you too.
Bro, like, I mean, I wish I could have prevented this. Cause I feel like this is a big part of, like, my fault also. Cause, you know, we grew up together. Like, I know I was the nicest to you. I know I probably made you feel like shit. And you told me that, I'm pretty sure that you told me that I made you want to kill yourself or something. And I'm sorry that I grew up being a dumb jerk to you.
They went to explore a haunted building. They see this. A paranormal team from Pakistan went to explore an abandoned building that the locals believe is haunted by an evil entity. It said that this skinwalker-like being is known to take the appearance of anyone who dares to disturb it. As soon as one of the crew members enters the building, this happens. What looks like a tall shadow figure can be seen peeking from the corner, watching him. But it wasn't until the group gathers their composure and decide to go back in that things take a dark turn. Through one of the cameras, they see themselves standing in the dark.
Alright guys, here are two more movies that scared the shit out of me. And once again, I feel like both these movies would be paired well as a double feature for a fun and spooky night. But nonetheless, let's get into it. First up, let's talk about the Poughkeepsie tapes. Because this movie was just genuinely fucking unsettling. It's filmed half mockumentary style as well as half found footage style as well, which I personally really love because it kind of takes you into this sense of it being real. This movie follows some homicide detectives in New York who discover hundreds of video cassettes. And on these video cassettes are the accounts of a brutal, sadistic serial killer. But I'm not gonna lie, like, this movie may not be for everyone because it is extremely gory as well as extremely brutal. But there are so many scenes that just like really shook me to my core with this one. But the one that really comes to mind is the basement scene where the killer walks in, and it's the way he walks in that was just, what the fuck, freaky. If you want to check this one out, here's the list of where it is currently streaming. Next up is the movie Lake Mungo. This movie follows a family who are still reeling from their teenage daughter's death, and since her passing, they've been experiencing some kind of unexplainable things happening around their house. So they hire a parapsychologist who then leads them to discover their daughter's double life, basically. And with that discovery, it then leads them to Lake Mungo. This movie has so many layers, and you think you know where it's going, and then it just has so many different twists and turns. Lake Mungo is also filmed half mockumentary as well as half found footage, and like I said, it is creepy and just overall eerie. Like the scene when the parents find the teenage daughter's cell phone and they open it, and what they find honestly fucking rattled me. Because it took me a few seconds to actually get what the meaning was on the cell phone, and then once I got it, I was like, bitch. And if you would like to check this one out, here's the list of where this one is currently streaming. And as always, if you guys have seen either one of these movies, please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. And I am always up for recommendations, movies that may have scared the shit out of you. Please drop them in the comments as well. And if I haven't seen them, I will most definitely be checking them out.
In this video, you take a test to identify creepy humanoid monsters. Identity test.
You will be shown images of human faces to test your recognition of uncanniness in them. We can hear you.
Normal. Normal? Creepy smile though. Normal. Damn, they could use higher res pictures. Definitely not normal. Absolutely not normal. That kind of looked like the guy from the first video. What does his face look like? I want to say the right one. He doesn't have any extended limbs or anything. I was in fact very wrong.
This photo, taken between 1885 and 1886, is of Ella Harper, the girl whose knees bend backwards. Ella suffered from a highly uncommon medical condition called congenital genu recurvitum, which caused her knees to bend in the opposite direction. Because her knees naturally bent that way, she actually found it more comfortable to walk on all fours. She ended up deciding to join the circus, where she earned a whopping $200 per week. It doesn't sound like much, but that is the equivalent of her making over $6,000 a week in today's money. A bio card given out to circus spectators reads, I am called the Camel Girl because my knees turn backwards. I can walk on my hands and feet as you see in the picture. I have traveled considerably in the show business for the past 4 years, and now this is 1886 and I intend to quit the show business and go to school and fit myself for another occupation. She married a school teacher in 1905 and passed away in 1921 at the age of 51. The money she earned during the circus gave her opportunities in life.
This video is exactly why you want to be careful if you're out in the woods alone.
You never get to see what's on the other side. That's where all the gold is waiting over there. Could be missing out what's on the other side.
I don't know, I'm not too familiar with animal calls, but something about this didn't quite sound right.
These are the scariest things Google knows about you, part 1. Up first, Google knows exactly where you live. I know we all typed in our address for shipping purposes, but even if you never typed in your address, Google will still know based on your location's history. Only 66% of people knew this, but now everybody does. Next up, Google knows how much money you have left. Google knows just how far away you are from becoming a millionaire or becoming completely broke. So realistically, Google probably knows more about us than our best friends or parents. Finally is the scariest one in my opinion. And Google knows and has everything you have ever deleted. From embarrassing photos to embarrassing search history, they know it all. So next time you go and delete something,
Creepy facts you probably didn't want to know. Part 4. No one knows who lives in this house, named the John Lawson House. Every day, this porch is occupied by a varying number of female mannequins. The number of mannequins, the positions that they're in, and the clothes that they're wearing changes from day to day. No one knows who's moving them or why. However, people do believe that the mannequins are there to convey a message. In 1871, a train crashed just 200 feet away from this house. It killed 22 people. And for some reason, the mannequins are always pointing.
If you're wondering how much human skin goes for on the black market, it's $10 per square inch. The average human body has up to 2,800 square inches of skin. If you were to sell an entire human body on the black market, that would get you about $28,000.
This video will absolutely terrify you. This man claims to have captured something in the background of his photo. This was posted on the Paranormal Encounters subreddit by user ExcitingBike3975. He said that he recently got a new phone and that he wanted to test out the nighttime capabilities of the camera. He also said that he lives in a very small town in Germany that has a very low population. Because he got this new camera, he decided to go out at night with his wife to a nearby park in his small town. He says this park rarely ever has anybody walking around in it, especially in the middle of the night. When they got there, he had his wife stand in front of the camera and he took a couple of pictures. While he was there, he didn't see anybody else in the park with him. But on one of the pictures, he captured this in the background behind his wife. You can clearly see what appears to be a man standing about 20 feet behind his wife. When you look closer, you can see that he almost appears to be floating and that he's missing a hand. You can't make out the details on his face, almost as if he doesn't have one. So, what do you guys think? Was this a ghost captured on camera in the background of this photo? Or was it just that there was a strange man in the park in the middle of the night he didn't notice? Let me know in the comments down below.
I ordered peas from the dark web. Let's unbox this and see what we got. What's in the box? Oh, there is something in here. Is this my peas? Yes, it is. This feels sus. I have a feeling this isn't going to be actual peas. The can doesn't feel like it's been opened. And it feels heavier than it should be. This spoon won't open it. Okay, let's see what's inside. There is a strange smell. What? This isn't peas. This looks like peas. This looks like homemade peas. Why is it warm and foamy? Maybe there was an error in packaging, and they misunderstood. Okay, it smells like...
If you've seen a shadow man with a hat and red eyes, you are not alone. The Hat Man is believed to be an entity attracted to certain families with several generations of reported encounters. He often appears to people in dreams or when they are in an altered state of consciousness. Have you seen him?
Alright guys, let's talk about Carmen Winstead. Carmen's family had moved to Indiana for a new life after her dad lost his job. Her first couple semesters in high school were hard, she barely made any friends. However, eventually she befriended these 5 girls. These 5 girls were talking behind Carmen's back, however, and she found out and confronted them. The bullying only worsened after she confronted them about it. They would vandalize her locker and mess with her personal items and spread more rumors about her. There was a fire drill one day at the school and Carmen was standing by a sewer. The 5 girls saw their opportunity and pushed her down the sewer as a joke. Carmen did not re-emerge, however, and the paramedics had to pull her body out with her neck broken. The 5 girls that pushed her down the sewer claimed it was an accident and everyone believed them. A few months later, everyone started getting weird messages on all of their social media about Carmen. The message was from an anonymous account claiming that these people had a certain amount of time to go to the police and tell the truth or they would face severe consequences. One by one, each of the 5 girls that contributed to Carmen's death were found dead the same way Carmen was, in the sewer with their necks twisted. It did not stop here, however. Namely, on Facebook and MySpace and the other social media apps that were around in 2006, people were getting messages to repost about Carmen Winstead's story, or they would die. 16-year-old David Gregory saw the post and didn't repost it, so when he was taking a shower, he heard laughter. He ran towards his laptop to go repost it, but he was too late. 5 hours later, his mother heard sounds from his room and he was found dead in the sewer with his neck broken like the others. Anyone who didn't share her story died.
The creepy legend of Mother Holloway They call her Mother Holloway because of her 3 children who passed away. It says she went mad after her kids passed away. She dabbled in the occult magic to bring them back, but she only ended up haunting herself. It says if you go in front of the mirror and call her 3 kids' names, she will come to you. Heart this video and follow my account to join the live.
The ruins of this homestead in Tasmania is said to be so haunted that investigators have fled the scene. These are the ghost stories from our own backyard. So sit down, dim the lights as I tell you the story of the ghosts of Garth Homestead. Located in the Fingal Valley lies the ruins of what used to be a 2-story sandstone homestead. The lost souls of Garth Homestead are said to still reside there. By night, howls, cries and shrieks can be heard coming from the ruins. It is not only humans that can feel a presence here, but animals are also said to feel something too. Grazing livestock won't come near the ruins, and horses won't take their riders near the location. But why are these ruins so haunted? There are a few stories that come from this location. The story of Garth begins in the early 1830s, when an Englishman travelled to Tasmania and was granted a plot of land. With the help of convict labour, he began to build his dream house. This house was originally built for his fiancée, who he left back in England. He promised her that he would go back to England and collect her once the house was almost complete. When that time came, he went back to England. But when he arrived, he found out that his soon-to-be bride had married someone else in his absence. He returned back to Tasmania, heartbroken and distraught. He then took his own life in the courtyard of his uncompleted home. Not long after, new owners moved into the homestead and tragedy struck again. Within the home was a young girl and a nanny who was an ex-convict. The nanny was known to be strict on the girl and would often threaten to throw her down the well. One day, the little girl got in trouble and she expected what was to come. Before the nanny could do it, she threw herself down the well. Although the nanny had threatened the girl that she would throw her down the well, and in one instance she nearly did, she was never actually going to do it. The nanny felt guilty and tried to help the girl out of the well, but instead she fell in as well, and they both were never rescued and died in the freezing water. After this tragedy, the rest of the family moved out. A man called Charles Peters was granted some land nearby, and he also owned the land that contained the Garth homestead. The house was still in good condition and he decided to move his family into it. Another tragedy struck when his 2-year-old daughter Anne caught on fire from the fireplace. She unfortunately died and her grave can be seen near the ruins. Charles and his wife eventually left the homestead in 1845. The Garth homestead was left to Charles's oldest son. 2 fires broke out in the house and eventually it was never restored. The building stayed in the Peters family name until 1922, where it eventually crumbled into ruins. The truth behind the stories are unknown, but most people definitely agree that there is an eerie feeling when they visit the location of the Garth homestead.
Did you ever smell smoke when there's no fire? I really do hate to be the bringer of bad news, but I must tell that what this actually means is that you were surrounded by dark.
This is the shocking truth about this murder mystery author's secret past. Pauline Parker and Juliet Hume were school friends. Pauline was 16 and Juliet was 15. On June the 22nd, 1954, their friendship took a very dark turn. The girls were spending more and more time together, and some said that they actually became quite obsessed with each other. They even started to experience almost like withdrawal symptoms when they weren't around each other. Their families started to get really worried about this. When Juliet's parents decided to get a divorce, they announced that they were moving to South Africa. At this point, the 2 girls started to get desperate as they couldn't bear to be not together. They decided to hatch a disgusting plan. They would murder Juliet's mum and stage it as an accident. On the fateful day, they decided to invite Juliet's mum to go on a walk with them. They had afternoon tea and then had a stroll around. The girls then led the mum up a path and attacked her. Using a brick in a stocking, they hit her over the head over 20 times. They then ran back to the place that they'd had the afternoon tea and faked cries for help. They claimed that she'd fallen over and hit her head, but police soon found the brick and they could see this was no accident. During the trial, some shocking evidence came out. In Pauline's diary, she documented the murderous plans. She referred to it as like planning a surprise party. Now, the girls ended up only serving 5 years in prison. It's believed that the pair grew apart and are no longer friends. Since being released, Juliet changed her name to Anne Perry. She's now a best-selling murder mystery author.
Ma! Ma, come outside, there's a fucking moose! Or a buffalo or some shit, they're fighting!
So one of the truly hard facts of nature is that when we say herbivore, that means they eat mostly plants, like 90-95%. That 5% will have you fucked up. On rare occasions, horses have been known to pick up baby birds and straight up eat them like popcorn chicken. Cows in Australia were seen chewing and eating a whole sand python. Deer have been caught scavenging the remains of human bodies, and yes, that is someone's rib in Bambi's mouth. And technically squirrels are omnivores, but if I told you what they do to baby birds, you'd never look at them the same. You almost forgot to mention, not only will they feed on past tense animals, you've even recorded them eating the carcasses of their own kind. Now someone's probably gonna comment that hippos are omnivores. Well, damn it, they're not supposed to be. But usually when you see herbivores going homicidal, it's often because of a nutrient deficiency. You now believe that it was a phosphorus deficiency that had cows following a mongoose meal prep. Same story with the Dahmer deer, gotta get.
Haunted places in India. Charleville Mansion. According to a legend, in 1913, Victor Bailey came to Shimla with his wife. Victor worked at the railway board as an assistant secretary. They stayed at the Charleville mansion because of its cheap rent. However, they did not know that the previous owner left the mansion because of a ghostly disturbance. It was said that the ghostly activities are stronger in the upper rooms. Although the couples did not find anything strange while living there for a year, it was their helper who experienced it. One day, when the helper was alone at the mansion, he felt someone going up the stairs. Curious, he went up to investigate. He was horrified to see someone passing through a closed door. When the couple left the mansion, it was sold to an Indian man who remodeled the place. Even today, people consider it to be one of the most haunted places in India.
Let's talk about what happened to George Torres and how his girlfriend trapped him inside the suitcase. George Torres was born on February 13th, 1978 to his parents George and Blanca. He had a couple of brothers and he was really close to his family. His mother Blanca says that her son was not perfect. I mean, no one is perfect, but she says that her son did make mistakes and, he did do things in life that he regretted. Despite him not being a perfect person, he was still a good son and a lot of people loved him. He had 3 children, and right before his death, he was working at a local hardware store and he was really passionate about this job. In 2017, George met a woman named Sarah Boone. 2 of them met at a bar where they were playing some pool, they hit it off, and then about a year later, they decided to move in together. Now, Sarah is an interesting person. She was born on October 10th, 1977, and just like George, she had previously been married and she also had a child. Sarah's ex-husband is named Brian, and he has come out and spoken about how his relationship was with Sarah. And he says that Sarah was absolutely nuts. She was an alcoholic, and she would go out every single night to different clubs and bars, and she wouldn't come home until 4 o'clock in the morning. She would be doing all of this on school nights while their son was sleeping. She would always choose alcohol before her family, so Brian had enough and he decided to divorce Sarah. He ended up just moving down the street from his house, and they would share custody of their son. Now, when Sarah and George started dating, Brian says that their relationship was not good. He would often have to go to Sarah's apartment to go drop off their son, and anytime he would go there, he would try to avoid Sarah and George because they were always fighting. At one point, Sarah had George arrested around 5 to 6 times for domestic violence, and then another time, both of them were arrested. They kind of had a reoccurring cycle where they would get drunk, they would fight, they would get really toxic, Sarah would call the police, have George arrested, bail him out the next day, and then they would just repeat the cycle. The one time that Sarah and George were both arrested was because they allegedly went to a bar and a man was speaking to Sarah, which made George jealous. When they got to the house, Sarah says that George started dragging her up the stairs and then he punched her in the face. So police were called to the scene, but George had a different story. He says that he wasn't the aggressor, that Sarah was the aggressor, and that she was trying to strangle him, and that the only way she could stop her from doing this was by kicking her. If he hadn't kicked her, then he says that Sarah would have incapacitated him. That's how hard she was strangling him. Police couldn't determine who was the main aggressor, and they ended up arresting both of them. However, the charges against each of them were later dropped because neither one of them wanted to pursue it any further. As you can see, they were both just toxic, and this relationship was not good. Everyone around them said that something bad was bound to happen. February 23rd, 2020, Sarah and George were at their apartment having what they called a good day. They were drinking some wine on the back porch, they had some cigarettes, they did a puzzle together, they painted, and then they decided to play a game of hide and seek. Sarah says that George thought it would be funny if he got inside inside the suitcase and hid from her. Sarah helped George get inside the suitcase. She zipped it up, not all the way. Says that she left the little hole open so that he could stick his fingers in there and unzip himself. Then afterwards, she just went to bed. She figured that he would later unzip himself from the suitcase and then join her. However, the next morning when she woke up, she realized that George was still inside the suitcase and that he wasn't breathing. Part 2 on what happened to George Torres and how his girlfriend trapped him inside the suitcase. Sarah wakes up and she realizes that George is still inside the suitcase and that he's no longer breathing. Instead of calling 911 immediately, she decides to call her ex-husband Brian. She tells Brian what happened and she tells him to come over, but Brian is like, okay, I'll go over, but you have to call 911 right now. Brian arrives to the house a few minutes later. He asks Sarah, did you call 911 yet? And she says no. Brian is like, okay, you need to call them right now, and that's when Sarah finally decides to call 911 and report George's death. Police arrive at the scene and they start asking Sarah about what happened. She kept saying that this was just an accident, and then she kept asking to go inside and grab her Dr. Pepper. She said that she was really thirsty and that she had really bad cotton mouth, and she kept telling the officer, can I go in there and get my Dr. Pepper, please? The officer was like, no, you cannot go in there because it's literally a crime scene. But Sarah would not stop asking the officer if she could go in there to grab her Dr. Pepper. Eventually, she got so thirsty that she literally leaned over and started drinking the water from the outdoor faucet. After that, she went back to one of the officers and asked them if they could go to the back porch and grab her cigarette. Yeah, she literally asked a police officer if they could give her a cigarette. The officer, of course, said no because you can't go inside a crime scene, and this just kind of went on for about like 40 minutes. Sarah just wouldn't sit still, and the officers just kept telling her to just remain calm because they were trying to figure out, what happened to George. An autopsy was conducted on George, and it revealed some very disturbing details. George had a laceration on his lip, he had bruising around his eye, he had scratches on his back, among other injuries. The medical examiner says that these injuries were recent. Also determined that George died of positional asphyxia with environmental suffocation consistent with prolonged confinement. They believe that George was inside that suitcase for 11 hours or more. At first, police were thinking, maybe this was an accident. Maybe they were playing hide and seek and then things just ended badly. However, after learning what the autopsy concluded, they realized that maybe this wasn't an accident. And then when they looked through Sarah's phone, they found some more disturbing evidence. The night of George's death, Sarah had recorded 2 videos. In this video, you can see George inside the suitcase asking Sarah to let him out. He keeps telling Sarah that he can't breathe and that he wants to get out of here, but Sarah just ignores him and laughs at him. George tells her, Sarah, I can't breathe, and Sarah says, yeah, that's how I feel when you choke me. Then just keeps saying, Sarah, and Sarah says, yeah, that's my name, don't wear it out. So he was literally asking Sarah to let him out and told her that he couldn't breathe, but Sarah just ignored him. Police look at these videos on the phone and they realize that this wasn't an accident. It's not like Sarah did fall asleep and just assumed that George was okay. She literally recorded herself mocking George and just watching him suffer slowly. Detectives show Sarah this video and she just says that it was a joke. However, police tell her it's not a joke. You literally let this man suffer to death. In the end, they arrested Sarah Boone and charged her with second-degree murder for the death of her boyfriend, George Torres.